You can't take it with you. We all know that. And yet, here I am, standing in the middle of my living room, surrounded by things I've carried with me for decades. Books I haven't opened in years, clothes I haven't worn since the early 90s, little keepsakes from trips I barely remember. They've been sitting here quietly, taking up space, not just in my home, but in my mind. Here's the shocking truth. The way most older women approach decluttering is wrong. In fact, some of the things we believe about tidying up are quietly keeping us trapped, in clutter, in guilt, and sometimes even in physical danger. I'm going to walk you through the 9 biggest decluttering mistakes older women make, and I promise you, if you skip even one of these, you could miss the single piece of advice that might save you months of stress, money, and regret. I didn't always think this way. For years, I thought I was just holding on to memories. I thought everything in my home was a part of me. Then one day, I tripped over a box I had been meaning to sort through one day. That box had been sitting there for 4 months, in the exact same spot. And as I picked myself up off the floor, I realized something. My clutter wasn't just clutter anymore. It was a hazard. It was a weight. It was a silent thief stealing my space, my energy, and my peace. But decluttering isn't just about getting rid of things. It's about making room, for safety, for joy, for freedom. And in this video, I'm not just going to tell you to throw things away. I'm going to share the mistakes that nearly every older woman I know, myself included, has made when trying to clear out their home. These aren't abstract tips from a magazine. They come from real life, real homes, and in some cases, real consequences. If you're like me, some of these will hit a little too close to home. You might even feel a pang of guilt when you recognize yourself in one of them. But that's okay. The point is not to judge ourselves for the past, it's to learn how to do better moving forward. And listen, I have to say this. If you think you'll just watch a little bit and come back later, you probably won't. That's exactly how clutter works too. We tell ourselves we'll deal with it later, and before we know it, years have gone by. Don't make that mistake here. Watch this all the way through, because one of these mistakes could be the very thing holding you back from finally having the home and the peace you deserve. And before we dive in, I need to ask you something. If you've ever looked around your home and thought, I have too much stuff, but I don't know where to start, then you're exactly who I made this video for. And if you want more real, heart-to-heart advice on making your life lighter, simpler, and safer, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because I'm telling you, I've been where you are, and the videos I have coming could be the difference between living in a home you love and feeling stuck in one you don't. Now, let's start with mistake number 1, and trust me, I learned this one the hard way. Mistake number 1. Trying to declutter all at once. I can still remember the day I decided I was finally going to get my house in order. I woke up on a Saturday morning with a burst of determination. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, rolled up my sleeves, and thought, right. Today's the day I'm going to tackle everything. By noon, I had emptied half my closet onto the bed, pulled boxes out from under the bed, and stacked piles of books all over the floor. I was knee-deep in sweaters, photo albums, and kitchen gadgets I didn't even remember owning. The problem? By 2 o'clock, I wasn't feeling motivated anymore. I was exhausted. The room looked worse than when I started, my back hurt, and I had no idea where to begin putting it all back. That's the trap. We think we have to declutter in one heroic effort, like the women on those makeover shows who end up with sparkling, organized homes in a single episode. But here's the truth. For most of us, especially as we get older, that's a recipe for overwhelm. Science even backs this up. Researchers have studied something called decision fatigue, and it shows that the more choices you have to make in a short time, the harder each decision becomes. By the end of my big decluttering day, I wasn't making thoughtful choices anymore. I was just shoving things back where they came from. And here's the worst part. When you take on too much at once and burn yourself out, you start to dread decluttering altogether. I didn't touch that closet again for months after that failed attempt. It became my shame closet. I'd quickly close the door if anyone came over, pretending it didn't exist. What I eventually learned is that real progress comes from small, focused sessions. 15 to 30 minutes on one category, shoes, books, pantry items, and then stop. Not because you're lazy, but because you're giving yourself time to make better decisions and keep your energy up. And here's a little trick that works for me. I set a timer and give myself a clear goal, like today I'm going to sort through just this one drawer. When the timer goes off, I stop. That way I finish with a sense of accomplishment, not defeat. If you try to do it all in one day, you'll end up with nothing done and everything in chaos. But if you pace yourself, you'll actually get further, and you'll enjoy the process instead of resenting it. And believe me, when we move into mistake number 2, you'll see how trying to save everything just in case can undo even your best efforts, and why I had a giant box of fabric sitting in my closet for 15 years without ever touching it. Mistake number 2. Keeping just-in-case items without limits. I'll admit it. I used to be the queen of just-in-case. In the back of my closet, there was a big cardboard box full of beautiful fabric. Soft cottons, rich velvets, cheerful florals, all neatly folded, all waiting for that magical day I'd start sewing again. That box had been with me through 3 moves and over 15 years. Every time I saw it, I'd think, one day, just in case I decide to make something. But here's the thing, that one day never came. Life kept moving, other hobbies took its place, and my sewing machine gathered dust. And yet, I couldn't let go of that box because it felt like letting go of possibility. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called loss aversion. We're wired to feel the pain of losing something more strongly than the joy of gaining something new. So even though I wasn't using the fabric, the idea of losing it felt uncomfortable, almost wrong. I convinced myself it wasn't hurting anything to keep it. But it was. It was taking up space, not just in my home, but in my head. Every time I opened the closet, it was there, reminding me of something I wasn't doing. One day, I set a limit. I got a medium-sized clear bin and told myself, this is my just-in-case box. If it doesn't fit in here, it goes. I went through that fabric and kept only a few pieces I truly loved. The rest, I donated to a local craft group that used it to teach young people how to sew. And you know what? It felt good, really good. Because now, instead of a giant box of guilt, I had one small container of potential projects, and the rest had gone on to actually be used. If you've got just-in-case items in your home, extra baking pans, old sports equipment, stacks of magazines you plan to read, ask yourself, when was the last time I actually needed this? If it's been years, it might be time to let it go. And if it's something you truly want to keep, give it a physical limit. One box. One shelf. One drawer. Once that space is full, you either use it or you release it. Because here's the truth, the space you clear will do more for your life today than the maybe someday items sitting in a dusty box. And that brings me to mistake number 3, when it's not the just-in-case items holding us back, but the things we're emotionally tied to. Things that aren't just objects, but memories, and why letting those control our decisions can keep us trapped in clutter for years. Mistake number 3. Letting sentimental items control the process. If I'm honest, this one was the hardest for me. I can sort through old kitchen gadgets without blinking. I can donate books I know I'll never read again. But when it comes to the things tied to moments, people, and milestones, that's where I freeze. I remember one afternoon when I opened a cedar chest in my bedroom. Inside were my daughter's graduation gown, the baby blanket my mother knitted for her, and a stack of letters from my late husband. The moment I touched them, the memories came flooding back, the smell of the high school gym on graduation day, the sound of my mother's voice as she wrapped that blanket around my newborn, the way my husband's handwriting leaned slightly to the right. My hands froze over the box. I told myself, I can't get rid of these. If I do, I'm erasing the memories. But deep down, I knew the memories weren't in the objects, they were in me. The trouble is, our hearts don't always follow logic. And so those items stayed, year after year, in that chest. Here's what I've learned. Sentimental items can be beautiful reminders of the past, but when they take up too much space, they stop being reminders and start being burdens. They can hold us in the past so tightly that we can't fully enjoy the present. And science supports this. Studies on emotional attachment show that when we have too many triggers to the past in our environment, it can actually make it harder to focus and feel content in the here and now. What helped me was creating a rule: keep the best, photograph the rest. I chose a few truly meaningful items: the baby blanket, a single letter from my husband, a teacup my mother loved. Then I took photos of the others. That way, I could revisit them anytime without dedicating a whole chest of space. I also started a small memory box, just one. If something sentimental doesn't fit, I have to decide whether it's worth swapping out something else. This one simple boundary has freed me from the guilt of keeping everything, while still honoring the things that matter most. When I let go of the excess, I noticed something incredible: the memories didn't fade. In fact, they became sharper, clearer. Because now, I was choosing to engage with them, instead of just letting them sit in a box collecting dust. But sentimental items aren't the only hidden danger in a cluttered home. Sometimes the problem isn't what we feel about the stuff. It's the very real safety risks it creates. And in mistake number 4, I'll tell you how I learned that the hard way, almost the moment I least expected it. Mistake number 4: ignoring physical safety hazards. This one hit me in the most literal way possible. It was a rainy afternoon, and I was moving things around in the hallway closet. You know, the kind of spot where umbrellas, winter coats, and miscellaneous stuff all seem to end up. I pulled out a box to get to an old raincoat, and because I didn't have anywhere else to put it, I set the box down in the hallway just for a minute. That minute turned into an hour. I made tea, answered the phone, and later decided to head into the kitchen. And that's when it happened. My foot caught the corner of that box, and before I knew it, I was on the floor. I didn't break anything, thank God, but I bruised my hip badly enough that I limped for a week. It shook me. I've read the statistics. The CDC reports that 1 in 4 older adults experiences a fall every year, and many of those falls happen right at home. What I hadn't realized until then was that clutter isn't just about appearance or organization. It can be a real danger. That one box could have changed my life in an instant. And here's the thing: when our homes are filled with piles, stacks, or things sitting in walkways, we're not just tripping over stuff, we're also making it harder to move freely, especially if we ever need to use a cane or walker in the future. The risk multiplies if the clutter is near stairs, in narrow hallways, or around entryways where we're carrying groceries or packages. So now, my first step in any decluttering project isn't about drawers or closets, it's about clearing the walking paths. I make sure every hallway, doorway, and high-traffic area is free of obstacles. I also use sturdy, non-slip mats and keep cords tucked away so I'm not weaving through a little obstacle course every day. I like to think of it this way: when you clear a path, you're not just making your home look neater, you're building a safer environment for yourself and anyone who visits. After my fall, I realized that safety had to come before sentimentality, before storage solutions, before everything else. But safety can also get tangled up in another big mistake, and that's believing we have to find the perfect new home for every single thing we're letting go of. In mistake number 5, I'll share how my obsession with donating and selling actually slowed me down for months, and how I finally broke free of that trap. Mistake number 5: believing everything must be donated or sold. For the longest time, I told myself I couldn't let go of anything until I found it the perfect new home. If I was going to part with something, it had to go to a charity that could use it, or I needed to sell it to someone who would truly appreciate it. On the surface, that sounds noble. But in reality, it was just another way to hold on to things longer than I should have. I remember one summer when I decided to clear out my dining room cabinet. I had china sets I hadn't used in decades, crystal glasses that hadn't seen a holiday table in years, and a collection of serving bowls that were too heavy for me to carry comfortably anymore. Instead of boxing them up for donation, I told myself I'd list them online. I'd get a little extra cash, and I'd feel good knowing they went to a home that would use them. But here's what actually happened. I took the photos, wrote the listings, and then I waited. Weeks went by. People messaged asking if I'd take less money, if I could deliver them, if I'd hold the set until next month. Meanwhile, the dishes were still sitting in my dining room, cluttering the space I was trying to reclaim. That's when it hit me. My need to make every item's exit special was slowing the whole process down. And it's not just me. Studies on decision-making show that when we give ourselves too many conditions for taking action, we end up paralyzed. I had turned a simple donation into a complicated project that required negotiations, scheduling, and emotional energy I didn't have. Now, I follow a much simpler system. When I decide something needs to go, it goes into one of 4 categories: donate, sell, recycle, discard. But here's the key: I'm realistic. Only high-value or in-demand items go in the sell pile, and I set a deadline. If it's not sold in 2 weeks, it gets donated. No exceptions. Everything else goes straight to donation or recycling. When I finally let go of that perfect home mindset, the flow of my decluttering sped up dramatically. My spaces started clearing faster, and I felt lighter because the burden of finding the ideal exit for each item was gone. And this is important: the moment an object no longer serves you, it's okay to let it go quickly. Its value isn't in how perfectly it's rehomed, it's in the space and freedom you gain by releasing it. But even with a good system, there's another trap. One that isn't about what we declutter, but when. And in mistake number 6, I'll share how ignoring my own emotional energy almost derailed my progress entirely, and how I learned to work with my feelings instead of against them. Mistake number 6. Not considering emotional energy levels. When most people think about decluttering, they imagine a physical task: moving boxes, sorting piles, putting things in bags. But what we don't often talk about is the emotional weight of decluttering, and how exhausting it can be in ways you don't expect. I learned this the hard way with a box of photo albums. One evening, I told myself, I'll just go through a few pictures before bed. It sounded harmless enough. I made some tea, sat in my favorite chair, and opened the first album. Within minutes, I was smiling, laughing, and then crying. The photos brought back so many moments: beautiful, bittersweet, and some I hadn't thought about in years. What I didn't realize was how much emotional energy I was spending. By the time I was halfway through the box, I wasn't making clear decisions anymore. I wasn't sorting, I was just sitting there, holding on to memories, feeling drained. I went to bed late that night, my mind swirling, my heart heavy. And the next day, I didn't touch the decluttering project at all. The emotional hangover was real. Here's the thing: decision-making is tiring even under normal circumstances. But when the decisions involve emotionally charged items, our brains and hearts work twice as hard. Research shows that our ability to make good choices actually declines after prolonged periods of emotional decision-making. That means if you start sorting through the most sentimental or triggering items when you're already tired, you're setting yourself up for frustration and burnout. Now, I approach emotionally heavy items differently. I schedule those sessions for mornings or early afternoons, when I'm rested and have the mental space to handle the memories that come up. I also limit my time: no more than 30 minutes on sentimental sorting in one go. If I feel myself getting too emotional or too tired, I stop. And here's the beautiful part: when I work with my emotional energy instead of against it, I'm able to make clearer, kinder decisions. I'm more willing to let go of what no longer serves me, and I actually enjoy revisiting those memories instead of feeling drained by them. But emotional energy isn't the only thing that can be wasted in the decluttering process. In mistake number 7, I'll share how I wasted both money and space by doing something that seemed like a smart first step, and why buying more storage containers before decluttering is one of the most common traps we fall into. Mistake number 7. Buying more organizers before decluttering. Oh, I fell for this one so many times. In fact, I used to think that buying baskets, bins, and shelves was the solution to my clutter problem. I'd watch those home makeover shows where someone's space goes from chaotic to picture perfect after they buy matching containers, and I thought, that's what I need. One spring, I decided I was finally going to get organized. Before I even touched a single drawer, I went to the store and bought armfuls of plastic bins, wicker baskets, drawer dividers, you name it. I came home with the trunk of my car full, feeling so proud of myself. But here's what happened next. Instead of clearing things out, I just rearranged them. I put clutter into prettier containers and told myself it was progress. The problem? I hadn't actually reduced the amount of stuff I owned, I'd just hidden it better. And those new containers, they ended up taking up more space than the clutter I started with. I was literally organizing things I didn't even need to keep. It turns out, there's a name for this, it's called clutter shuffling. It feels productive, but all you're doing is moving things from one place to another without making real decisions about whether you even need them. Psychologists say this kind of fake progress can actually keep you stuck, because it tricks your brain into thinking the problem is solved, when really it's just covered up. Now, my rule is simple: declutter first, then buy organizers only for the things that remain. That way, I know exactly what size, shape, and type of container I actually need, and I'm not wasting money or space on something that's just going to hold items I shouldn't be keeping in the first place. And here's a little secret: when you own fewer things, you often need far fewer organizers than you think. Sometimes the shelves, drawers, and cabinets you already have are more than enough once the excess is gone. Breaking that habit of buying first saved me money, space, and a whole lot of frustration. But clutter isn't always physical. In mistake number 8, we'll step into a different kind of mess, the kind you can't trip over, but can still overwhelm your mind every single day: digital clutter. Mistake number 8, forgetting about digital clutter. I used to think that decluttering was just about the things I could see and touch: the piles of clothes, the boxes in the garage, the kitchen drawer that wouldn't close properly. But one day, I opened my email inbox and realized I was drowning in a whole other kind of clutter. There were thousands of unread emails, most of them newsletters I never remembered signing up for. My phone was crammed with duplicate photos, blurry shots, and recipes I'd saved years ago but never made. My computer desktop looked like a junk drawer, random files everywhere, half of them with names like document_final_final2. The thing about digital clutter is that it's sneaky. It doesn't take up space in your living room, so you can ignore it for a while. But every time you go looking for something, a photo, a file, an email, you have to sift through the mess. And whether we realize it or not, that mess drains our mental energy. In fact, researchers say digital clutter can be just as stressful as physical clutter, because our brains process both as unfinished business. I learned this firsthand when I tried to find a photo of my granddaughter's first birthday. I knew I had it somewhere, but it was buried in a sea of random images, screenshots, memes, grocery lists. I spent half an hour searching before I finally gave up. And the worst part? That wasn't the only time it happened. Now, I treat digital clutter just like physical clutter. I schedule short, focused cleanup sessions, maybe 15 minutes once or twice a week. I unsubscribe from emails I don't read, delete duplicate or blurry photos, and organize the rest into simple folders. I even set up a rule for my inbox so newsletters I actually want go into their own folder, ready for me when I feel like reading them. And here's what's amazing: clearing that digital mess lifted a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. My devices run faster, I can find what I need without frustration, and I'm not staring at a wall of chaos every time I open my phone or computer. But whether it's physical or digital clutter, there's one final mistake that can undo all your progress, and it's one I've made more than once. In mistake number 9, I'll tell you how I kept finding my home full of stuff again, even after big cleanouts, and the simple habit that finally stopped the cycle. Mistake number 9, not having a maintenance plan. I can't tell you how many times I've stood in a freshly decluttered room, taken a deep, satisfied breath, and thought, there, I'm done. The closet was neat, the counters were clear, the shelves were perfectly arranged. It felt amazing, for a while. But here's the truth no one tells you: decluttering isn't a one-time project. If you don't have a plan to keep it that way, the clutter will slowly, quietly creep back in. I learned this the hard way with my kitchen. After a big clean-out, my cabinets were organized so beautifully that I actually took photos of them. But over the next few months, little by little, things started to pile up again. A new mug here, an extra set of storage containers there, a couple of free water bottles from an event. Before I knew it, I was back to shoving things into whatever space I could find, and my tidy cabinets were just a memory. The problem wasn't that I didn't know how to declutter, it was that I didn't have a system to maintain it. And without a system, it's all too easy to slip back into old habits. That's why now, I follow a few simple rules that keep my space in check. First, the one in, one out rule. If I bring something new into the house, Whether it's a sweater, a coffee mug, or a set of sheets, I let go of something similar. This keeps my storage spaces from slowly filling up again. Second, quarterly reviews. 4 times a year, I spend just an hour going through one area of the house, a closet, a pantry, a bookshelf, to see what's accumulated. I'm always amazed at how much I can release in those quick check-ins. And finally, mindful buying. I've trained myself to pause before buying something and ask, where will this live in my home? Do I already have something that serves the same purpose? Most of the time, I realize I don't actually need it. Once I started maintaining instead of starting from scratch every few years, everything changed. My home stopped feeling like a constant battle against stuff, and I could actually enjoy the spaces I had worked so hard to clear. And here's the thing, having a maintenance plan doesn't just save your home from clutter. It saves your time, your energy, and your peace of mind. Because the less time you spend redoing the same work, the more time you have for the things and the people you truly love. Now that we've walked through all 9 mistakes, I want to leave you with one final thought. Decluttering is not about having less for the sake of it. It's about creating space for more joy, more safety, more calm. And every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to that. Before I wrap this up, I want you to take a moment and imagine your home exactly the way you want it. Not spotless like a magazine cover, but calm, safe, and full of things you actually use and love. Imagine opening a drawer and finding what you need right away. Imagine walking through your hallway without dodging piles or boxes. Imagine sitting down in your favorite chair and feeling your shoulders drop because the space around you feels light and peaceful. That feeling, it's possible. And it's not about perfection, it's about progress. We've walked through the 9 mistakes I've made, and maybe you've made them too, trying to declutter all at once, keeping too many just-in-case items, letting sentimental things control the process, ignoring safety hazards, insisting everything must be donated or sold, overlooking your emotional energy, buying organizers too soon, forgetting about digital clutter, and not having a maintenance plan. You avoid these mistakes, your decluttering journey will be smoother, faster, and far less overwhelming. But here's the truth, knowing them isn't enough. You have to take action. That first drawer, that first box, that first corner you decide to clear, it matters. And please hear me on this, decluttering is not about erasing your past. It's about making more room for your present and your future. The memories you cherish will still live in your heart, even when the objects don't. And the space you create now is a gift, to yourself, to your health, and yes, to your loved ones who may one day have to sort through what you leave behind. If this conversation has made you stop and think about your own home, don't just walk away from this video and say, I'll get to it someday. That's the same thinking that kept my clutter in place for years. Make today the day you choose one small spot and start. And before you go, I need to ask you something important. If you felt even one moment in this video that made you think, yes, that's me, or I needed to hear that, then please, hit the subscribe button right now. I make these videos because I've been there, and I know how heavy a cluttered home can feel. But I also know how freeing it is to live lighter, and I want to walk you through it, step by step, in every video I share. Don't let this be another thing you meant to do. You've already taken the first step by listening. Now, take the next step and commit, not just to decluttering your home, but to caring for yourself in the process. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'm proud of you for being here. And I can't wait to hear in the comments, which one of these 9 mistakes have you been making, and what's the first change you're going to make today? Share your story in the comments, white down pointing backhand index. Your experience might be the exact motivation another woman needs to finally start clearing her space. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe before you forget. Don't let this video be another thing you meant to get back to someday.